Welcome to Elevate Your Event, your favorite podcast for transforming fundraising events. Join us weekly for expert tips and creative ideas to make your next event a standout success.
On today's episode of Elevate Your Event, we're joined by Quam Taylor. She's here to transform the way nonprofits think about fundraising. From building authentic donor relationships to shifting the focus beyond events, Sherry shares practical strategies to attract investment-level donors, engage boards in fundraising, and drive sustainable growth. Get ready for actionable insights to elevate your fundraising game. Let's dive in.
Well, welcome back to the Elevate Your Event podcast, where we talk about all the various ways you can make your next fundraising event better, or we also talk about amazing ways that you can drive more revenue for your nonprofit. And so we've got a special guest today. So we have got Quam Taylor, hails from Chicago, from the Evanston area. So you Northwestern fans out there, you can give yourself a little silent cheer. And if you're not a Northwestern fan, you can still cheer for our new guest here. And then in the studio with me, we have the lovely
Inga Weiss, one and only. So happy to be here.
Inga brings star power to the Handbid team, so we're glad to have her in the studio with us. Sherry, thanks for coming. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do to help nonprofits?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. So in short, I help organizations scale their general operating revenue. And I have yet to meet an organization who doesn't need more flexibility in their revenue model. And that kind of comes down to general operating revenue. And so I work with orgs who either want to really diversify their funding because they can't maybe do what's in their strategic plans because of that flexibility issue, or they have huge plans to scale. And so, they might want a 2X, 3X, 5X, even have a 10X organization. And so I really help them solidify that funding model, get that hours to dollars mentality going, and pivot into the activities that fully fund their organization.
That's awesome. And so are there certain size organizations that you start with?
Yeah, right now I probably have clients who have $2 million annual budgets and one that has over $100 million annual budget. But what's kind of crazy is the pain points are the same, because even that large client, like 90% of their revenue is from government reimbursements. And so it's almost like they're functioning like a smaller nonprofit in this big behemoth company. And so that commonality is the same. It's how do we attract investment level donors that really are mission aligned, and how do we help them understand our financial need and really give their best gift to that financial need?
That's awesome. And, so let's talk about the $2 million one. And I'm sure we have some listeners that are thinking, oh my God, I'm not even there, but you will one day get there. So at that level, what do you tend to see? Are these organizations that have kind of a rudimentary development program in place? Or, is it, like I'd say, outside of events, are they doing some other things and you're just helping them kind of, I would say just improve that in general? Or what typically are you doing at that level?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll answer this really. This you could be a $1 million organization, or maybe you're hoping to get to that $1 million mark. And 97% of nonprofits are under the $5 million mark. So it's like, how do we actually kind of scale up above that? But to answer your question, I wouldn't say it's rudimentary, but what I would say is it's highly focused on transactional fundraising. So a lot of organizations come to me, and I want them doing some level of transactional fundraising, events, appeals, campaigns, all the fun things. But oftentimes I find that they're kind of trying to grind harder on those activities when that struggle really exists to pivot into, well, how would I grow a relationship with a major donor? How do I attract that donor? And then let's get the room with them. What would I say to them? And so it's really like, we know we have people giving. We know people love us. They love our mission. But we don't think they're giving their best gift. And they're certainly not giving that gift every year. And so that's where I feel like the opportunity really exists to say, why aren't they giving their best gift? We could talk about that today. But it's that, or the other thing I would say is when I say transactional, it could be highly dependent on foundations. And so it's We are on the application spin cycle of, we're just going to try to send out 50 applications and hopefully we get half of them. And so even with foundations and institutions, there's a way to build that relationship so that you are sitting down and really just securing a greater gift from these funders.
I would imagine you've got to have the staff to do that, and then the staff has to have the expertise, right? I mean,
yes.
So I've worked with, and we have a lot of clients like this too, but I sit on some boards that are kind of in that range, right? Like say they're raising $1 million and it's very transactional, right? It's two or three events. It might be some grants that they're trying to go out there and get. It might be some other types of appeals or campaigns. But there's nothing really around the development side of it, like, the conversation past that. So, and I don't honestly think they have the wherewithal or the knowledge on how to even do that. So is that what you do? You come in and help them put that in place?
I do. I posted on LinkedIn the other day, and I'm a big LinkedIn fan. But I was talking about how, like, even with my own business or other entrepreneurs that I network with, like you always hear this, like, oh, I'm honing my sales skills, like, or you think of like top sales performers in the U.S. They're always mastering that conversation or that tone or that ask. And my post that I put out was like, fundraising is sales, but people never come to me saying we want to be the best, the experts at that 1% of salespeople who know how to ask, and we have that skill set, and we want to put money into our team so we can grow by millions. I rarely have people come to me with that. I think sometimes in the sector we think like, well, I don't know, they'll figure it out, or people will just see that our mission is so incredible that they'll just give to us. You nailed it. This is a skill set issue. Just because your staff is killing it when it comes to grant applications or events or appeals and campaigns, it doesn't mean they've had the training of sitting down with a major donor, walking them through your financials, your strategic plan, and soliciting them.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I believe and I see that every day, that's leaving millions of dollars on the table. So it's a skill set issue. And thank you for bringing it board so early. All of my board members participating in those, CEO to CEO conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so the board is going to take the cue from the staff. And so if the staff is only doing transactional fundraising activities, why wouldn't the board just follow suit? So it's critical to equip your team to really know how to pivot into these, what I call investment level conversations, which is that one-on-one, that conversation that's beyond heart-based storytelling and into the financial and growth story of the organization.
Right. And I actually see that as an evolution of the board, because when you're small, I think everything's transactional, or it feels that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the very first thing I ever did when I founded my first nonprofit was run an event, right?
Yep.
And so you pick board members who are really good at that, right? Like, oh, you're a hard worker. You'll go get me auction items. Like, you'll clean up after the event. You can be on my board, right? But to your point, at some point, like, that's not what you want your board members doing. You want them being those types of people that can help you close those bigger deals, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and honestly, sometimes like I do so many board workshops and board trainings, and someone will always say, like, right at the get-go, I hate fundraising. It's like, and I say, like, I think you hate what you think fundraising is, because who really wants to collect auction items and go beg their friends and like do all those things? Actually, if it is more relational and Jeff, you said like, oh, hey, actually, I have a colleague who would love this mission. I'd love to have coffee and maybe just introduce you and see if it resonates. That's probably what you do on a day-to-day basis with clients. Like, that's actually natural. And so it's funny when I do workshops and I say, well, maybe you don't need to be doing those things. What if you each were just participating in a handful of relationships and just attending the coffees, doing the thank yous, helping lead this donor on an incredible journey? Usually they go, oh, well, that feels way better. And like, really, that's what you wanted me to do? That's going to yield way more money, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense to me, because as I think about it too, most organizations, and we need to come back and talk about events, right? It's Elevate Your Event podcast, but events play a critical role in all of this. But outside of that, like, as I'm thinking about how do I take my organization from $1 million to $5 million, okay, if that's the strategic plan, I think the evolution of your board is as important, to your point, as the evolution of your team and what their skill set is.
Yeah, I agree. I think we hear things like, well, we have a working board or like all of these kind of scripts, I think, which this is not a board conversation for,
Or the family members.
Or family members or friends of friends.
Right.
It does turn into, and I could say this about so many things that probably you guys have this experience too. It's like, well, that structure or that activity, that thing that brought us to that point is fantastic and nothing was wrong with that, but it's not going to, get us to that next point. It's not going to 2x, 5x. So we really have to do something different, and we have to look at the model we're running, the strategy we're running, and be okay stopping things if they no longer serve us.
Right. So let's dive into your brain a little bit. You've got a lot of knowledge and experience, and you've helped a lot of nonprofits in this area. So what are some of the things that you do when you come into an organization to help them get from the 1 or 2 million to 3 or 4 million?
Yeah, good question. So here's what I'd say to that. We can't just start with okay, well, let's crank up the fundraising activities. And what I mean by that is so often donors are not giving their best gift. And I'm working for a donor's best gift. I want a general operating, really, really generous gift. They're not giving their best gift because there's some misunderstanding or some confusion. And what I mean by that is if we think of, and I'm talking at the top of the pyramid, but those donors need more. They have to understand what your plans are, meaning, what are you doing this year? Why do you want to, if you're $1 million org now, why do you want to be a $5 million? What is that? What's going to be happening then? How are lives changing? And then how are you actually going to get there? Mm-hmm. And why do you need $1 million this year? If you're going to need 5 in 5 years. So they have to understand your plans. It can't be what one donor said to a client of mine before I was working with them. They said, hey, it feels like you're trying to boil the ocean. Like, it can't be. We're ending homelessness. Look, tell me what you're doing and tell me why you need my money. That's that best gift every year. They have to understand your programs. This sounds a little bonkers because it's like, well, they're giving to us. They should understand what we do. So often, donors, board members don't understand really what the organization does. Or maybe if there's 3 programs, they kind of get the one. I don't really see how the advocacy and education fits in. So they're not understanding how maybe those 3 programs have to fit together for good, which yield general operating gifts. Third, maybe my most important topic or exciting topic, budgeting. They don't understand your financial need. And so you think, well, we're a nonprofit. How can they not understand your financial need? Donors don't understand, are you a big organization or are you small? Are you at $2 million? Do you have a $2 million need or a $5 million need? Do my tax dollars go to this? Or I see big corporate logos on your website. They don't always understand your financial need. So plans, programs, and need. You have to make sure that major donors are attracted, that you are a good investment. You're going to use their money well, and that you are running a good business that yields the mission. And so often we kind of gloss over those because we've got a great story and who would want to give to us. And we go straight to the fundraising activities.
Right.
When actually there's questions in donors' mind. And then they're just going to be like, okay, cool, here's $1,000.
Right.
That's where the money is. That's where you have to start.
It's hitting home to me because some of the boards that I've sat on where I don't want to be the working board member, right? I run a company. I don't have time for that. Right. I'm happy to lend some expertise, and I'm actually happy to have coffee with whoever you want me to have coffee with, right?
Yeah.
But what I saw that recently at one of the events they ran where I don't think that's I love events. Obviously, we run tons of them, and I think it's a great entry point for some of these conversations, but I don't think, to your point, you're always going to get your best gifts out of these people there, right? I mean, you might start a conversation there, but it's got to finish somewhere else. And we saw that. And And I think what's lacking in that best gift is exactly what you just described. They don't know the plans. They don't know the program. They don't know exactly what you're going to be doing with this money. I don't know how big you are, right? I mean, how big of a problem are you solving? Are you solving a problem in a county in Denver, or are you solving a problem for the entire metro area? Or are you solving a problem for the country? Right. And so I like your idea is like put some boundaries around it so they can see how meaningful their gift and how impactful their gift is going to be. I think it's really smart. Right.
And you know what? I feel like the other part of this to lay on top of that is like, okay, so we have those things tight. It takes 81% of donors 6 months to 24 months, if we're doing it right, to lead them to their best gift. And so the other part of this, I feel like, is, okay, we get this tight, and then it's like, okay, I'll just throw it out to people and, put it in everything. We actually need to let the relationship simmer and take that long, so we make sure we've answered all their questions, and that when we are sitting down to make that ask, that we're like super confident that they are going to give their best gift because we took the time to build that relationship and remove all those obstacles. Mm-hmm. And so that's another like really counterintuitive part, I think, of our sector. This just kind of baked in that it's like, we have the meeting. Oh my gosh, they're rich. Oh, they had tears in their eyes when we told them the story. Let's ask them for money.
Oh my gosh, they're rich. They had tears in their eyes. Oh my gosh, they're rich. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my gosh, they're rich. That doesn't always work out. Trust me.
It doesn't always work out. And so let it actually, like, well, again, it's like we're not proposing on the first date. We got to take the time to do the thing. And so like I think there's a lot of these counterintuitive things of kind of back to our like, I hate fundraising. Is like, well, don't do that then. Let's actually have authentic relationship building and then attract donors who actually, our mission is their mission and they want to give us a lot of money. Let's do that.
Or even if it's relational, and I'll say, so one of the organizations, obviously the very first one I found, it was for my daughter, right? And it was kind of the impetus for Handbid was the the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association of Colorado. And it's a statewide scope, right? But it's definitely got some, I would say, global implications in some of the things that we're doing. But what you just described, I think, became a big problem for us for a while. I would have people come up to me and say, because we'd talk about the problems we're trying to solve, and they would say, well, just explain to me what you want to do and how you want to do it and how much money you need, and I'll give you the money. Right? Now, that sounds pretty easy, right? Until you go back and say, like, well, gosh, I really do have to put a plan together here. Like, how do I want to go after this? Yeah. And to your point, you can boil the ocean with that. Right? Yes. Like, hey, we want to solve long-term care, for adults in Colorado with Prader-Willi. Well, why would we stop there? Maybe we should do this for the entire country, right? And then all of a sudden, your $2 million project becomes a $50 million project. Yeah. And I've met these people, Sherry, you're absolutely right, where it's like they don't want to build a solution for, Metro Atlanta. They want to build a solution for the world, and they're like, it's going to cost $100 million. I'm like, okay, well,
but where do we start?
That's going to be hard. Why don't you just start with like getting 10 kids in it?
Yeah.
Right. I totally agree with you. This is why, and people come to me saying, hey, how do I find major donors? And I say, well, we got to reframe that and ask ourselves, how are we attracting major donors? And so I have a client who's incredible, and she came to me as a $1 million organization, and she said, hey, new strategic plan, I need to be a $10 million org. And she said it with such confidence. I said, okay, let's go. As we've talked to funders, and she's ahead of schedule, so I love that. She's an incredible fundraiser. As we met with donors and funders, even one guy, it was like, I love this person for this. She presented the need. She's like, we're going to 10X. We're going to do this. We're going from local to regional to national to global. And he says, not risky enough, not innovative enough. Come back to me when it's bigger.
Wow.
Come back to me when you're thinking bigger. Mm-hmm. And, we're just conditioned in this space to say like, oh, donors don't like risk. Oh, very few would fund innovation. Tell me your plans. Tell me what your financial need is. So you got to know what you need to be able to sit with that donor and say, thank you so much for pushing me on that. I've kind of gone back to the drawing board and kind of walk you through that. Can I share with you what that looks like? And so, we got to attract people who are like-minded, And so we as leaders or scaling nonprofits have to have all those things in place.
No, it makes sense.
And if I may add, as logical as it sounds, I still believe that most of the donors give from an emotional standpoint. And let's not forget that most of the donors are asked every day, bombarded every day by many, many organizations. So how do you stand out? Why should I give it to you?
Well, especially if
Yes.
they're rich,
Yeah.
right? But as I've said many times, generous
why should
people
I
are
give it to
generous,
you?
rich people are generous, right? So, but it brings up a good point because I do know a guy, locally here, and he came to me once and he said, I just hate going to charity events because they just think I'm going to give them money because I'm wealthy.
Right.
And he's like, your organization never asked me, never expected that out of me. All you've done is pour into me what you're doing. And you're giving me the opportunity to think about it myself and then come back to you and say, how can I help?
You nailed it.
So you're connecting me to your mission.
First and foremost.
Yep.
I think this leads us into event talk, but this is sometimes I'll say, this is a total boss move and this is what we need to do. Some people come to me, they've got a gala in place and they're board members just trying to fill these tables with as many people who they think can give it at high levels. And there's always this one couple where we're like, if we could just get the Thomases to this event, they're just loaded. If we could just get them to the event. Sometimes I'll tell my clients, I said, okay, great. We got the Thomases to come. They're going to sit at the table. Let's tell them not to give. Let's say to them, hey, we're so excited that you're coming. I'd love for you to sit with our board president, learn, listen, and don't feel any pressure to give. And then if this resonates with you, let's grab coffee, in a couple weeks here after it's settled down.
Yep.
And I'd love to just hear what your feedback was. That advice is baffling to people, but we have them in the room. I'm like, it's desperate, right? And so why would we not take the 6 months to 24 months if we finally got them in the room? Just to make sure their mission is our mission. That's kind of wild. But actually, we're going to get a lot larger and longer term gift if we don't come off desperate and we actually are authentically wanting to build relationships with people who want to be our friends and want to be in relationship with us. But that advice is deer in the headlights sometimes.
Agree.
I love it because you're right. I mean, it's so funny. We talk to so many people and they'll be like, well, hey, how'd our paddle raise do? I'm like, well, X, Y, Z, whatever. And they're like, whoa. It's like, brother, it is not the software, right? I mean, people are standing up there raising their paddle in the air. I said, it is your expectations and your connection with the people in the room. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's not the technology. I mean, people want to give, they're going to find a way to give, right? But you've got to create that, that desire. And I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I've seen it. You're right. I sit on these boards and we're like, hey, how's table sales going? Oh, they're going okay. We got to get the Thomases there. They got to get them there. I'm telling you, if we get them there, they're going to donate 10
Magic
grand.
bullet.
How do you know they're going to donate 10 grand? Well, they're rich.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that doesn't make any difference, right? If they do not connect with what you're doing or what we're doing as an organization, I wouldn't count on it.
And just because they gave it last year.
They might
doesn't
bid in
mean
the
they're
auction.
gonna-
I can see that, right? I mean, auctions do have a purpose, which is to extract money out of people who aren't necessarily ready to write you a check, but
Yeah. And I think what Inga, what you said about it is an emotional, we hope there is a kind of an emotional tie or to our work and that sort of thing. But I also sometimes feel storytelling gets such a buzz in our sector, which it should, right? We want to tell the stories of lives that are being changed. But oftentimes we are kind of stopping halfway through the story of we're telling the heart, the mission, the impact. But for somebody, for the Thomases who can write $100,000 check, part of sometimes their emotion is well, and then what's the financial story? What's the growth story? How are you transparently scaling this organization? I mean, they're asking, are you a good investment? Because if that's for a CFO, right? Who their heart conversation is money,
Right.
and so we can't ignore that half of the story for our mid and major level donors who need to know a bit more, and oftentimes that's just equally as important as the kind of heart side of it.
yeah.
Agree. And I think it boils down to a lot of organizations still doing one major fundraiser a year, not fostering and maintaining that beautiful relationship, growing that relationship throughout the year with their donors.
Doing nothing with
And
the
then
fundraiser.
and then expecting next year Thomases show up and give more when the Thomases haven't heard from you for the rest of the year. So clearly, you don't care. Why should they care?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your point, like you said, they probably have an amount they're just going to give at an event.
Yeah.
Right? Not their, what'd you call it? Their meaningful gift
Their
or
best gift.
their best
Yeah,
gift. Yeah.
best gift.
It's
They're
just
not
kinda
going to give
the
their
here you
best
go.
gift. Yeah, I'll give you $1,000.
Right. Because you're not doing anything to grow me, to grow with me, to develop that relationship with me, to get my best gift for me.
So Sherry, you were
nailed
going to
it.
say something. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say this. Like, I have this perfect example right now with an incredible organization doing mental health work, and they kind of the same thing. Like they have this great annual event, but it wasn't like getting them out of the cash flow crunch every year. It's not helping them diversify their revenue. It's taking it's just taking so much time, and it really wasn't yielding the dollars that they needed. And they actually chose, right before they even hired me, they kind of chose to push the pause button on the gala, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that was scary. And I was like, I know it's scary. This is like, you were a faith-based organization for a few months because you got to trust this process. And so I bring them up because it was very interesting as they analyzed who had been giving at the events and had some honest conversations. Like, do we really know these people? Like, have we ever had one-on-one conversations with some of these people who have come for years? And in many cases, the answer is no. And they're an incredible team of fundraisers that I would love to know them, as just having a relationship with them. And so as they pivoted, and it's not fast, but as they pivoted into these one-on-one conversations, 4 conversations with donors yielded the same amount as their gala.
Isn't that nice?
Right?
It's real nice.
Yeah.
I love those results. But that's just, I wish everybody had those exact results. I mean, don't get me wrong. But it was just highlighting to them, like, okay, some of those were event donors and they're going to go away. But man, what if half of the people weren't getting their best gift at that event? Which, like I think you said earlier, Jeff, like rarely is somebody giving their best gift at an event. It's kind of here's $1,000, or maybe we do want, in my case, cups tickets, or we will do that. And so I love results like that, that when people have made a real conscious effort to just say, we got to stop doing it this way because it is not getting us long-term results. And even though it's not a quick fix, moving into these deeper relationships with donors, it always pays off. It always does.
That makes sense. So talking about events, and we'll move on to something else, but so when you come in and you have a new client or an existing client who's running that gala or golf tournament or whatever, what tends to be your recommendation as it relates to the event, whether it's, kill or enhance or change or whatever?
Yeah. I've been accused of not liking events. I think
Everybody likes a party, Sherry. Come on.
I'm going one next weekend. I was at one a couple. All the things. And I'm rarely going to be the consultant who's like, well, you should throw this $1 million gala out the window. I'm probably not that person. However, I do go back to this concept. Like in my model, I teach, and is that your top 30 donors should be yielding between 50 and 75% of your revenue. The proper opportunity and problem is that I want those donors being solicited one-on-one, privately in a room, having the conversation, the 6 months to 24 months, asking for that best gift. Where I find the money is sitting on the table, and usually the work that I'm doing is helping them see that, like, actually all those donors are coming to your event and giving medium gifts when perhaps that event should just be a step in their donor experience as opposed to the donor experience for the year.
Right.
And so oftentimes this reframe, and I have this actually right now with a couple clients, and it's like, but if we did that, we wouldn't hit our $1 million goal or our $500,000 goal. We wouldn't reach our goal. But if people are giving their best gift overall as an organization, you might be raising $1 million more. So like sometimes like the obsession of the goal and the success of the event is kind of keeping our eyes down here and less on the bigger picture. And so those are the kind of things I'm looking at and not saying get rid of it, but saying how can actually, for each one of our donor segments, how can your event support their donor journey? And so for our mass and grassroots donors, like, great, have them come, auction, all the things. But some, and some major level donors, they want the paddle up. They want to see, I am trip to Morocco. That is me. I'm buying the most expensive thing in the room. That's what they value.
Right.
But for many people, I'm coaching them to maybe move that ask before the event, or my example with the Thomases of, hey, if this resonates, let's talk later. And so it's just really kind of taking it out of what the spotlight, if you will, and putting it as a step where it needs to be.
That makes sense. Yeah. And we talk a lot about that with our clients. I mean, that's why that's why we push back on a lot of our clients who refuse to collect data at these events. I don't know how you're going to have a follow-up conversation with somebody that you just created a fake email for, but
It's
That's wild.
It's painful.
Oh, it happens all the
It's
time.
painful.
Painful.
They do not want to bother their donor at the check-in, waste their time to collect an email. So they're just not going to ask for an email.
Yeah, and
How are you
they
gonna
have their donors' emails, like the regular donors, but the people that are coming in the door for the first time,
Right.
don't you want to know who they are?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know who they
Yes.
are.
Right.
It's just crazy. It really
It's insane.
Hey, so I mean, we could talk events all day long, obviously, but I do have another question for you because you are a consultant in this space, and I'm just curious because I see this I see this a lot from the board side. How do you handle resistance to some of the stuff that you're going to recommend? Because I will tell you, I work with one organization and they don't want to change anything.
I do get resistance initially, and here's how we handle it. We have to root everything back into the model. That like the numbers have to do the talking for us. And so, again, oftentimes people like, let's hire a fundraising consultant. Let's go do more fundraising things. Like there's oftentimes some steps that people skip. And that step is, well, if we want to grow from that $1 million org to that $5 million org, what is the team we need to build that yields that number? What is the infrastructure? What are the systems? What's the technology that actually, what's that multi-year financing plan that actually would start yielding $5 million? Well, we can have that in place and look at it in this model I mentioned. So if 50 to 75% of your revenue is coming from relational, sitting down, one-on-one fundraising, then this financing plan has to be rooted in that. And so, like if I had an Excel spreadsheet in front of me, it probably make more sense. But I bring that up because we have to point back to the numbers because oftentimes then on this financing plan, it's like, okay, well, we want to be, a $1 million org, but 25% of that revenue should only be coming in from these activities. But our team is spending 100% of their time on these activities that should only be yielding 25%.
Right.
And so, especially for board, fiduciary responsibility, we have to have this financing plan that is our compass. It tells us what to do. It tells us our team makeup. It tells us what we need to stop doing. And so we have to point back to that. The other thing I'll say is like, usually I have to be very upfront in conversations, and I'll even message to people when I talk to them on just an initial call. I'm like, hey, my clients want to change. They are learners and they are ready for change, and they are ready to kind of open up all the cans of worms and let them sit on the table and put them back together slowly. They know I'm not a magician. This is not going to be easy work, but they're committed to making that change. And I almost I have to message that early because I think while you're asking that question is like there's just so many organizations and boards or whatever that are resistant to change. I'm not a magician. Like I can bring 50% of the learning to the table, but that my client has to bring that 50% as well.
And the willingness, right? I mean,
and the willingness.
And the upfront willingness. Because I'll tell you, like politically, I think it can get tough. And so I'll just tell you a story. Like, and this is 20 years ago. How I'm dating myself. I apologize. But so, this organization calls up my wife and I'm like, hey, you guys, like, you're young and you're smart or whatever. I was young 20 years ago, Inga.
You're still young.
You're still young.
You're still young.
So anyway, like, hey, can you help us just like fundraise, like, or like show us how to fundraise more, or like do events or whatever? And I said, sure. Like, what specifically do you want us to help you with? Hey, we just want to raise more money. Okay. I have no idea about anything with nonprofits. So I go downstairs from my office and I'm talking to a friend of mine. She's like, you got to talk to Barb. Barb has a master's degree in nonprofit management and fundraising. She's a professional fundraiser and she works in our department. So I go to her and I said, well, they sent me this box of stuff and I throw like all these brochures and everything out on the table. And she was like, oh my God. And so she's like,
None of that.
yeah, we're going to have to she's like, we're going to put a plan together. Okay. We're going to put a plan together for this organization. You're going to present the plan. Well, the plan started with a rebrand. And we need new messaging. You need to change, like, to your point, right? What are your plans, right? And how can people connect with those plans? And so anyway, so we were trying to figure out, like, okay, so what is this organization about? How do we communicate that? We're going through all this stuff. And so I go back, I present it to the executive director, and she's like, you want us to change the logo?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I said,
let's start with that.
I just want to I'm getting a recommendation we should rebrand. And then my company, because they did so much advertising, got an ad agency pro bono to do the entire rebrand for free. Okay?
Incredible.
Yeah. So this goes on for 8 months, okay, of back and forth, everything. The brand's amazing. I was like, I learned everything. I didn't know any of this stuff. I'm like, this is so cool. I've never been involved in a rebranding. This is a lot of fun. Executive director was involved. She's like, yeah, you got to come to the board meeting this summer and present it. Okay. So I fly out there. I go to the board meeting. I walk in there. Sure, I will tell you, they had no idea.
They didn't know the rebrand was happening?
No.
Right. Disconnect right there.
Dun, dun.
And so they were not happy. And we presented like everything to your point, like this is what this is going to do for us, right? And here's the modeling and here's what we're going to do. But that was my first taste of like resistance. Resistance for the sake of we've always done it this way and we don't want to change that. And you being the person that's going to come in and get them from $1 million to $5 million, my guess is that you're going to enact a lot of change to do that.
Yep.
And so I was just curious kind of how you navigate that. But sounds like you got a plan to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just also, I'm on starting year 13 of my business. I have had to get choosier. Like I can kind of tell and ask some questions up front of, or it might be an ED who's so excited about the change. It's like, I need this. And like that comment that crushes my heart when I talk to them on the second call, board said no.
Yeah.
Yep.
They do that to us too.
And where do
Board said no.
And what do they say next? What do they always say? Oh, because we've always done it this way.
Right.
And
Yes.
we're not willing to change it.
That's going to cost too much money. And I was like, wait a
It's
second.
not in the budget.
We
Yeah.
are a profit center,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, our software, if all our software does is cost you money, I wouldn't buy it either.
Right.
Totally.
So
Yeah, and it's like, it's not in the budget. So, okay, well then, but also guess what's not in the budget? The money, the increase of money that you would make by, investing in your software or investing in me. Well, that's not in the budget either. So let's get that in there.
right.
Because you can't just put the expense in without putting the income in.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%. And so that makes sense to me. It's like, so why would we hire Sherry? We're going to hire Sherry because Sherry is going to pay for herself fivefold, right? I mean, that's the point.
Right.
Yep. And that's my goal. I tell people, sometimes I get the like, well, we don't like consultants. I said, I have to give you a solution that gets you results, or I don't get a referral from you, which means my next client. And so I'm not going to give you something that I don't think is going to give you, to get you what you want. It's a win-win. And so I just think
It is.
sometimes it's...
Yeah, well, to your point, I mean, consultant can be a dirty word, and I used to be one, and I had an old boss that would tell me, like, no, don't hire consultants. They just pay, they charge you a lot of money to tell you what you already know, right? And I'm like, okay, in a lot of cases, that's probably true, but you're not a consultant in this case. I mean, you are consulting, but I would say you're like an accelerator. Like, I think you're telling them things that they don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree. And I look at myself as like advisor, coach, teacher,
Right.
linking arms with you and like guiding you through this. I shifted 4 years ago to I will only work with people for 12 months, meaning I don't do 3-month sprint contracts. And why do I do that? Because it takes that long.
Yeah.
It just, we have to be realistic. And so like that means I can't work with 30 clients at a time. I might be able to work with 5 to 7. And so I'm going to know your business intimately. And I'm going to be that phone call that you get when you do get the meeting with the Thomases on Friday. And so it really, it really is the anti-consultant way of, if I just told you to do things, that's just bonkers to me. Like I have to be with my clients as they meet the Thomases and then the Smiths and then the, like all the different scenarios and different donor personalities so that they know what to do in those meetings.
That makes sense.
This
I'm
is great.
smarter already. And I wasn't very smart to start with, but I'm way smarter now.
You've got some good ideas.
I think we should do another meeting with Sherry
I'm
in
going to go
person.
back to one of my boards and I'm going to say, you guys need to hire Sherry. Stop asking me
Agreed.
questions. Hire her.
Hey,
agree.
I wouldn't decline that call.
She's a good one.
If they want to change,
Yeah.
that is.
Hey, like we do the same thing. I mean, and we'll wrap this podcast up here in a second, but like we've kind of evolved into the same state, which is like, if you're not willing to do these things, or if you're not willing, and look, not that we're always right, but if you're not willing to kind of listen to our advice on how to do certain things, your event is not going to go well, and we're not a good fit for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
From a technology standpoint.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with your theme. It has nothing to do with your program. You can do whatever you want, but there are certain things that are kind of imperatives for us to create a great guest experience. And some of the things you're about to do are not going to create a great guest experience because we know our software better than you do. And we've had to put our foot down, right? And I would imagine you probably do too. Like, look, I'm not going to be successful. You're going to be wasting your money because I'm going to be trying to implement these changes in your organization. You're going to refuse them. And so maybe we should just call it quits now, right? I mean, to your point. Or maybe not to your point. I'll let you decide if that's what you do or not.
It just, usually I kind of can weed out by the questions or
Yes.
maybe we're not ready for this.
Right.
You need to do this first and then come back to me. And if you still have the issue, let's talk.
We do the same
That's
thing,
probably the way I
right?
say it.
Well, my board gave me a budget of $500 for software. Okay, well, your board shouldn't be giving you a budget for software. But let's flip the conversation. Let's flip the narrative around to what if you spent $500 on something and it generated $5,000, would that be a
Yes.
benefit to you?
Yes, you would.
Yeah, and I could say the same thing for what you do, for sure. I sit on enough boards. I mean, some of them are significantly smaller than what you're describing, but I see the value in what you're doing. So thank you for what you do for nonprofits and for taking the $1 million people into $5 million people. You're taking them into the what is that, like the 5%, top 5%, right? Would you say
Yeah, it's
95% of charities are below 5 million?
97.
97.
Wow.
Even when I flip that, I'm like, so
Wow.
3% are above 5 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's bonkers to me.
It is bonkers.
That is amazing.
And I always think, like, even post-COVID, it's like, there's never been a greater time when that number should be scaling so much. And so it really does come down, like you said, skill set and in making investments and not being scarcity minded and really building the engine that can yield more money so they can have greater mission impact. It's kind of practical if we let it be.
I agree. So that's kind of the entire gamut, right? So events play a role. It's a great entry point for a relationship. It's a great time to touch base with some of your donors, but let's also be fair and say that they're probably not giving their best gift there. So what are you doing outside of your event season to nurture these guys, right?
You nailed it.
All right, Sherry, if people want to hire you, and I'm sure they are after this podcast,
Thank you.
how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn every day, Sherry Quam Taylor, or you can go to my website, which is quamtaylor.com. It's QUAM Taylor.com.
Awesome. Well, you stay warm in the Chicago winter that's coming up.
I will.
We'll try
I
to do
will.
the same thing in Denver.
Thank you, Sherry. So nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
you.
much.
It was a
And-
pleasure.
Yeah. We'll wrap up this episode of the Elevate Your Event podcast. Until next time, happy fundraising.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed our show, please take a moment to leave us a review. You can find us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content. And if you're a fan of video, check us out on YouTube. Until next time, happy fundraising.